Jasmine Wright stares at her trembling hands, CEO badge glinting under harsh airport lights. "As of this moment, everyone on this crew is terminated," she announces, voice ice cold. 9 minutes earlier, those same flight attendants had forced her to move from first class, claiming her ticket was obviously fraudulent. Before I dive into this incredible story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If this kind of justice against discrimination resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories of people standing up against injustice. What would you do if you were in Jasmine's position? Let's find out how she turned the tables on those who underestimated her. The morning sun streamed through the blinds of Jasmine Wright's elegant Atlanta penthouse as she packed her carry-on luggage with practiced efficiency. At 38, Jasmine had climbed every rung of the corporate ladder through sheer brilliance and tenacity, recently being appointed CEO of Airline Technologies, a major supplier of aviation software and safety systems to airlines worldwide. Her phone buzzed with another message from her executive team about today's crucial meeting in San Francisco. National Airways, one of the country's largest carriers, was on the verge of signing a $300 million contract for Airline's revolutionary new safety system. The deal would transform both companies and potentially save countless lives with technology Jasmine had personally helped develop. "Mom, did you take your medication this morning?" Jasmine called, checking on her elderly mother who had moved in with her after her father's death last year. Despite her tremendous professional success, Jasmine still faced the challenges of being her mother's primary caretaker.
"Yes, baby. Now don't you worry about me. You focus on that big meeting," her mother responded, shuffling into the bedroom with a cup of tea for her daughter. Jasmine smiled warmly, but couldn't fully hide the exhaustion in her eyes.
She'd been up until 2 in the morning finalizing her presentation, knowing that as a black woman in the overwhelmingly white male aviation industry, she couldn't afford even the smallest mistake. Any error would be magnified, any oversight used, as evidence that she didn't deserve her position. She checked her Stanford MBA diploma hanging on the wall, a reminder of 15 years of breaking barriers. From being the only black woman in her graduate program to developing software systems that had revolutionized aviation safety, Jasmine had consistently defied expectations and overcome obstacles. "You sure you don't want me to call a car service?" her mother asked, noticing Jasmine checking the time. "No need, Mom. I've got time for the train. Plus, I need to clear my head before the flight." Jasmine carefully placed her laptop in her designer briefcase, making sure her presentation was backed up in 3 different places. Her phone buzzed again with an email from her assistant, confirming her first-class reservation on National Airways Flight 1387 to San Francisco. Jasmine had splurged on the first-class ticket, using points accumulated over countless business trips. The 5-hour flight would give her precious time to review her notes and mentally prepare for the meeting that could define her career. "This deal could change everything," she told her mother, embracing her before heading to the door. "Not just for me or Airline, but for airline safety standards globally. Just remember what your father always said," her mother replied with a knowing smile. "Always be twice as good," Jasmine finished the familiar phrase. It was the mantra her father, a former civil rights attorney, had instilled in her from childhood. In corporate America, as a black woman, she needed to be twice as good to be considered half as worthy. As Jasmine headed toward the elevator, she mentally reviewed her day's schedule. Land in San Francisco by 3, meet with her West Coast team by 4, dinner with potential clients at 7, and final preparation for tomorrow's surprise announcement. No one at National Airways knew she had been appointed CEO just 3 weeks ago after her predecessor's unexpected retirement. The press release wouldn't go out until after tomorrow's meeting, making her the surprise keynote speaker at the Aviation Technology Conference. The weight of responsibility settled on her shoulders as she entered the elevator. $300 million, hundreds of jobs, potentially thousands of lives that could be saved by her company's technology. Today had to go perfectly. Little did Jasmine know that in a few hours, her journey would become not just about closing a business deal, but about confronting discrimination in an industry she had dedicated her life to improving. Atlanta International Airport buzzed with the usual morning rush as Jasmine Wright strode through the main terminal. Her tailored charcoal suit and confident posture turned a few heads, though not for the reasons she might have hoped. Despite Her obviously expensive attire and professional demeanor, she couldn't escape the subtle looks of suspicion that had followed her throughout her career. She approached the security checkpoint, boarding pass, and ID ready. The TSA agent, a middle-aged, white man with thinning hair, barely glanced at her documentation before waving her toward a separate line. "Random screening," he muttered without meeting her eyes. Jasmine bit back a sigh. Random screenings had somehow become a predictable part of her travel routine. She watched as several white business travelers sailed through the regular line, without additional scrutiny. "Arms out, please," instructed the female TSA agent conducting the secondary screening. Jasmine complied silently, maintaining her dignity as the agent waved the detection wand around her custom-tailored suit. 20 minutes later, having been delayed by the extra screening while others moved freely through the checkpoint, Jasmine finally made it to her gate. National Airways Flight 1387 was already in pre-boarding. A cluster of passengers stood near the gate counter, most of them older white men in business attire similar to hers. The gate agent smiled warmly at each approaching passenger, checking tickets and directing them to the correct boarding lanes. But when Jasmine approached, she noticed an immediate shift in their demeanor. Their smiles tightened, their eyes narrowed slightly. "May I see your boarding pass, ma'am?" asked the gate agent, emphasizing ma'am in a way that somehow made it sound less than respectful. Jasmine presented her digital boarding pass on her phone. "First class, seat 3A, she said clearly. The agent scrutinized the screen longer than necessary. "And your ID, please?" Jasmine produced her driver's license, which the agent compared to her boarding pass with exaggerated care. Meanwhile, the white businessman behind her was waved through with barely a glance at his documentation. Finally cleared to board, Jasmine walked down the jet bridge, mentally shifting focus to her upcoming presentation. She needed to be sharp for the meeting, not distracted by these all-too-familiar indignities. As she approached the aircraft door, a flight attendant named Richard Thompson, according to his name badge, greeted passengers with practiced cheerfulness. His smile, however, faltered when he saw Jasmine. "Good morning," she said professionally. "Morning," he replied curtly. "Boarding pass?" Jasmine displayed her phone screen again. Richard frowned. "First class?" His tone suggested disbelief. "Yes, seat 3A, Jasmine confirmed patiently. "Are you sure you're on the right flight? This is Flight 1387 to San Francisco." "Yes, I'm aware," Jasmine replied, her patience thinning. "As indicated on my boarding pass." Richard looked again at her digital boarding pass, then at her. "Do you have a paper boarding pass?" Several passengers behind Jasmine shifted uncomfortably, the line beginning to back up. "The digital pass is sufficient," she stated firmly. "It has been for every other passenger." Richard's lips tightened. "One moment, please." He stepped aside and whispered something to another flight attendant, a blonde woman who glanced at Jasmine with undisguised suspicion. "Is there a problem?" Jasmine asked, maintaining her composure despite growing frustration. "No problem," Richard replied with artificial pleasantness. "Please proceed to your seat. We'll verify your ticket information during the flight." Jasmine moved past him, acutely aware of the stares from other passengers. Not one had intervened or seemed troubled by the differential treatment. This, too, was familiar. The silence of bystanders who noticed discrimination but chose comfort over confrontation. As she settled into her first-class seat, Jasmine took a deep breath. She refused to let this encounter derail her focus. The safety system she'd helped develop could prevent accidents and save lives. That was what mattered today, not the small-mindedness of airline staff who couldn't conceive of a black woman belonging in first class. Little did she know, this was merely the opening act of a confrontation that would escalate beyond anything she had experienced before. The first-class cabin of Flight 1387 hummed with quiet activity as passengers settled in. Jasmine Wright arranged her workspace efficiently, laptop positioned for easy access, presentation notes in the seat pocket, phone charging. The meeting in San Francisco demanded her complete preparation, and these 5 hours would be valuable time to refine her strategy. She had just opened her laptop when a shadow fell across her tray table, Looking up, Jasmine found herself facing Veronica Paulson, the head flight attendant, a tall woman with artificially bright blonde hair and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Excuse me, ma'am," Veronica began, her voice pitched to Carrie. "May I see your boarding pass again?" Around them, conversations quieted as passengers tuned into the developing situation. Jasmine felt her shoulders tense, but kept her expression neutral. "Certainly," she replied, pulling up the digital pass on her phone for the third time since arriving at the gate. "Seat 3A, first class." Veronica squinted at the screen with exaggerated scrutiny. "This ticket appears unusual." "Unusual? How?" Jasmine asked, conscious of the growing audience. "It just doesn't look right," Veronica replied vaguely. "Where did you purchase this ticket?" "Through my company's corporate travel portal, as I do for all my business travel," Jasmine explained, professionalism intact despite the implied accusation. Veronica exchanged glances with Richard, who hovered nearby. "Do you have any other form of verification? The system is showing some irregularities. Have you ever been publicly questioned about something you had every right to?" Comment number 1 if you've experienced someone doubting your credentials or belongings. Like this video if you believe there's never an excuse for this kind of treatment, and subscribe to see more stories of justice served against discrimination. "What specific irregularities?" Jasmine asked, her voice level but firm. She was acutely aware of the eyes of other first-class passengers, all white, mostly male, watching the interaction with varying degrees of discomfort and curiosity. Not one offered support. "Ma'am, we have reason to believe this ticket may be fraudulent," Veronica stated flatly. The accusation hung in the air. Fraudulent. The word choice was deliberate, loaded with implications that went far beyond a simple ticket verification. "That's an extremely serious allegation," Jasmine replied, her voice dropping to ensure she wouldn't be labeled as the angry black woman stereotype that could instantly diminish her position. "I assure you my ticket is legitimate. I'm a frequent flyer with your airline and have all the necessary documentation." She produced her Airline corporate card and ID, though carefully keeping her CEO status private. Nothing about this interaction suggested these crew members deserved to know her position. Veronica barely glanced at the credentials. "These don't verify the ticket purchase." "Then perhaps you should check your system again," Jasmine suggested. "Or speak with your gate agent who verified my boarding pass minutes ago." By now, the final boarding announcements were being made. Through the cabin windows, Jasmine could see the last passengers hurrying down the jet bridge. "Ma'am, we need you to relocate to economy class while we sort this out," Veronica announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Absolutely not," Jasmine replied firmly. "I purchased this seat, it was assigned to me, and I have verification. There's nothing to sort out." The standoff intensified when Richard returned with his phone. "I've contacted the gate. They can't verify this reservation properly." "That's impossible," Jasmine said, pulling out her laptop. "I have the email confirmation and receipt." Before she could open her files, Captain Bradley Wilson emerged from the cockpit, his presence immediately commanding attention. In his 50s with salt and pepper hair and the confident bearing of someone rarely questioned, he surveyed the situation with a frown. "What's the delay here?" he asked Veronica, not addressing Jasmine directly. "Possible fraudulent ticket, sir," Veronica reported. "Passenger refusing to relocate." The captain turned cold eyes to Jasmine. "Ma'am, we need to resolve this quickly. We have a schedule to maintain." "I agree completely," Jasmine replied. "Check my reservation properly, and we can all proceed with our day." "We don't have time for this," the captain dismissed. "Security has been called." Jasmine felt her heart race but kept her expression controlled. "On what grounds?" "I have a legitimate ticket." "That's yet to be determined," the captain replied. "In the meantime, you need to follow crew instructions or you'll be removed from the flight entirely." As if on cue, 2 airport security officers appeared at the cabin entrance. The situation was escalating dangerously. Jasmine knew the stories of passengers, particularly black passengers, who had been forcibly dragged off flights or even arrested in similar scenarios. Making a split-second decision, She began recording the interaction on her phone. "I'm documenting this discrimination for the record," she stated clearly. "I have verified my ticket multiple times. I am being singled out without cause." "No." "Recording on the aircraft," Veronica snapped, reaching for Jasmine's phone. "Don't touch me or my property," Jasmine warned, her voice steady despite her racing pulse. The security officers approached. One hand on his taser, the younger officer addressed the captain. "What's the situation here?" Jasmine realized she had reached a critical decision point. She could stand her ground and risk physical removal, arrest or worse, effectively ending her chances of making the vital meeting in San Francisco. Or she could strategically retreat, document everything, and find another way to address this injustice. "I'll move to economy," she finally stated, gathering her belongings with deliberate calm. "Under protest, and with the understanding that this is discriminatory treatment, I expect full documentation of why my verified first-class ticket is being invalidated." The relief on the crew's faces was palpable. They'd won, or so they thought. As Jasmine collected her items, a white businessman in his 50s hurried into the first-class cabin, clearly the last passenger to board. "So sorry I'm late," he announced to no one in particular. "Traffic was a nightmare." Veronica's demeanor transformed instantly. "Not a problem at all, Mr. Johnson. We're just getting settled. Can I take your coat? Would you like a pre-departure beverage?" The contrast couldn't have been more stark. No verification of his ticket, no suspicion, no questioning. Just immediate, deferential service. As Jasmine made her way to economy, dignity intact but humiliation burning in her chest, she heard Veronica telling the late passenger, "We've upgraded you to a better seat in first class, sir. 3A has a bit more legroom." Her seat, given away based on nothing but the color of her skin. What would you do if you were in Jasmine's position? Would you have stood your ground or made a strategic retreat? The real question is, what happens when those who discriminate discover they've made a terrible mistake? The economy cabin felt particularly cramped to Jasmine after the spacious first-class seat that should have been hers. Flight attendants bustled past, deliberately avoiding eye contact as she settled into seat 23B, a middle seat that offered neither comfort nor the workspace she desperately needed. "That was completely uncalled for," said a quiet voice beside her. Jasmine turned to find a young Asian American man in the window seat, his expression a mixture of sympathy and indignation. He extended his hand. "Anthony Chen. I boarded early and saw the whole thing from here." Jasmine accepted the handshake, surprised by the simple act of solidarity after so many had looked away. "Jasmine, right. And thank you for saying something. Not many people do." Anthony nodded grimly. "I know. I've been on the receiving end myself, though never quite that blatant." He gestured discreetly toward his open laptop, where Jasmine glimpsed a draft article. "I'm a journalist with Tech Innovations magazine. I cover the aviation and technology sectors." A flicker of caution tempered Jasmine's relief at finding an ally. As CEO of Airline, she maintained a deliberately low public profile. The surprise announcement of her appointment and the major safety system contract were both embargoed until tomorrow's conference. "What brings you to San Francisco?" Anthony asked. "Work," Jasmine replied vaguely. "I'm with Airline Technologies." Anthony's eyes widened slightly with interest. "The aviation systems company? That's a coincidence. I'm heading to the International Aviation Technology Conference to cover their big announcement tomorrow. Word is, they're revealing some revolutionary new safety system." "Is that so?" Jasmine replied non-committally, suppressing a smile at the irony. Little did he know he was sitting next to the very person who would be making that announcement. The seatbelt sign illuminated with a soft chime, and the flight began its taxi toward the runway. Jasmine tried to focus on her notes, but the cramped conditions made it nearly impossible to work effectively. She felt Anthony watching her with professional curiosity. "May I ask what you do at Airline?" he inquired after a respectful pause. Jasmine considered her response carefully. "I work in executive leadership," she said truthfully but vaguely. "How long have you been covering tech?" Anthony accepted the deflection gracefully. 7 years with Tech Innovations. Before that, 3 years with a smaller publication in Chicago. He hesitated, then added, "I've written extensively about diversity issues in the tech industry, including discrimination in customer service within the transportation sector." Their conversation paused as a flight attendant approached with the beverage cart. It was Richard, the same attendant who had questioned Jasmine's ticket at boarding. "Something to drink?" he asked Anthony with professional courtesy. "Just water, please," Anthony replied. Richard filled a cup and handed it over, then turned to Jasmine with a markedly cooler expression. "And you?" "Cranberry juice, no ice," Jasmine requested. Richard nodded curtly and moved on without serving her. "Did he just—" Anthony began, incredulously. "Pretend I don't exist?" "Yes," Jasmine confirmed. "Watch what happens next." Sure enough, the beverage cart completed its journey down the aisle, and Richard returned to the galley without bringing Jasmine's drink. When she pressed the call button, it remained unanswered for 15 minutes before Veronica appeared. "Is there a problem?" the head flight attendant asked with thinly veiled impatience. "I ordered cranberry juice that never arrived," Jasmine stated simply. "We must have run out," Veronica replied without checking. "We'll be serving a snack later." She reached up and turned off the call button before walking away. Anthony shook his head in disbelief. "This is egregious. I've never seen such blatant—" "I have," Jasmine interrupted quietly. "Many times. Usually more subtle, but not always." Their conversation deepened as the flight continued, with Anthony sharing his own experiences with discrimination as an Asian American journalist often mistaken for tech support at industry events. Jasmine found herself appreciating his perspective and genuine outrage on her behalf, though she maintained her professional boundaries. What neither of them noticed was the elderly black flight attendant working the rear of the aircraft. Dorothy Williams had been with National Airways for 35 years and had witnessed the interaction at boarding through the curtain separating the cabins. Now, as she passed by with coffee refills, she slowed near Jasmine's row. "Cream or sugar?" she asked, making brief but meaningful eye contact with Jasmine. "Just black, thank you," Jasmine replied. As Dorothy set the coffee cup on Jasmine's tray, she discreetly slipped a folded napkin beneath it. With a slight nod, she moved on to the next row. Jasmine unfolded the napkin under the guise of wiping her hands and found a handwritten note. "I've documented incidents like this for years. Nothing changes because passengers don't know the proper channels. Email flightreportnationalair.com with date, flight hours, and crew names. CC. paxadvocateunationalair.com. I'm retiring next month and have nothing to lose. Dorothy." Jasmine slipped the note into her pocket just as her phone chimed with an incoming email notification. Checking it discreetly, she found a message from her VP of Sales marked Urgent, National Airways Contract Status. She opened it to find a celebratory update. "Great news! National Airways CEO Thomas Reynolds has approved the final contract terms for our safety system implementation. $300 million deal confirmed pending your signature tomorrow. Reynolds will personally attend the conference announcement. This is the biggest contract in company history." Jasmine stared at the screen, a slow, incredulous realization dawning. National Airways, the very airline that had just humiliated her, was about to sign a $300 million contract with her company. A contract that required her personal approval as CEO. Her gaze drifted toward the first-class cabin, where the crew continued, pampering the passengers who belonged there in their eyes. They had no idea who she was, no idea of the power she held over their company's future, no idea that the woman they had deemed unworthy of basic respect was about to become one of their airline's most important business partners, or at least, she was supposed to be. Jasmine turned back to her phone and began methodically documenting the discrimination she had experienced, complete with times, names, and specific actions. This was no longer just about her first-class seat or personal dignity. This was about exposing a systemic problem within an industry she had dedicated her career to improving. Beside her, Anthony noticed her focused expression. "Everything okay?" Jasmine allowed herself a small, determined smile. "It will be." 30,000 feet above the Midwest, Jasmine Wright carefully reviewed the evidence she had gathered. Her phone contained recordings of the confrontation, timestamps of the denied service, and photos of her legitimate ticket and confirmation. Anthony had discreetly captured additional footage from his perspective, including the preferential treatment given to the white businessman who now occupied her seat. "This is more than enough for a solid complaint," Anthony remarked, his journalistic instincts evident in his methodical approach. "Though in my experience, airlines typically respond with form apologies and vouchers that do nothing to address the underlying issues." Jasmine nodded thoughtfully. Complaints alone rarely create systemic change. The people with power to implement real reforms seldom experience this kind of discrimination themselves. Her phone buzzed again with another message from her executive team. "CEO Reynolds keeps asking which Airline executive is on today's flight. He wants to personally greet you at arrival gate before tomorrow's formal contract signing. Advised your flight number but maintained confidentiality about your new position as requested." The irony was almost too perfect. Thomas Reynolds, National Airways CEO, was planning to personally welcome an Airline executive he assumed would be arriving in first class, likely expecting the white businessman who had been given her seat. Anthony noticed her expression. "Something interesting. You could say that," Jasmine replied. She made a decision and lowered her voice. "What I'm about to tell you is embargoed until tomorrow's conference announcement. As a journalist, I need your word that this stays off the record until then." Anthony's expression turned serious. "You have my word. Professional ethics." "I'm not just in executive leadership at Airline," Jasmine revealed. "I'm the CEO, appointed 3 weeks ago, after my predecessor's retirement." Anthony's eyes widened. "You're the surprise keynote speaker tomorrow." "Yes. And National Airways is about to sign a $300 million contract with my company for a new safety system I helped develop." Anthony let out a low whistle. "And they just kicked their most important business partner out of first class based on racial profiling. That's spectacularly bad judgment." "It's more than bad judgment," Jasmine corrected. "It's indicative of a culture that permeates their organization. And I'm beginning to question whether National Airways is a company Airline should partner with at all." She showed Anthony the note from Dorothy, explaining the flight attendant's discreet act of solidarity. "This suggests a pattern," Anthony observed. "If Dorothy has been documenting similar incidents for years without meaningful response from management?" "Exactly," Jasmine agreed. "This isn't about one bad crew or one bad day. It's systemic." As they strategized, Dorothy passed by again, this time with the snack service. She slowed at their row, subtly checking that no other crew members were watching. "I can tell you're someone important," she murmured to Jasmine while placing a snack on her tray. "I've seen how these incidents get buried. 15 written reports about this same crew in the past year alone. Management does nothing because Captain Wilson is friends with the regional director." "Thank you, Dorothy," Jasmine replied quietly. "Your information is extremely valuable." After Dorothy moved on, Jasmine received another text from her San Francisco team. Latest contract draft attached for final review before signing. Legal has flagged no issues. Opening the attachment, Jasmine began examining the contract with new eyes. Section 11.4 caught her attention. Ethical business practices and non-discrimination compliance. The very airline that had just discriminated against her was contractually promising to uphold ethical standards. "They're in breach before we even sign," she murmured. Anthony leaned closer. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about leverage," Jasmine replied, "and accountability that goes beyond a single incident or crew." She began crafting a comprehensive plan, fingers flying across her phone's screen as she outlined specific demands. 1. Immediate accountability for the discriminatory crew. 2. Airline-wide anti-discrimination training program. 3. Revised complaint procedures with transparent tracking. 4. Hiring diversity initiatives. 5. Financial commitment to organizations fighting discrimination. "This isn't about revenge," Jasmine explained to Anthony. "It's about using this moment to create lasting change. I won't simply take my business elsewhere. That allows them to continue these practices with passengers who don't have my leverage." Anthony nodded appreciatively. That's the difference between a reaction and a response. Anyone can pull a contract in anger. Not everyone can transform a personal humiliation into structural improvement. As they refined the strategy, Jasmine received a message from the conference organizers confirming her keynote speaking slot. Final schedule attached. You're introducing the new safety system at 10 a.m. with National Airways CEO Thomas Reynolds joining for partnership announcement. Everything was converging toward tomorrow's revelation. Jasmine felt a calm determination replace her earlier anger. This wasn't the first time she had faced discrimination, but it might be the first time. She had the position and evidence to demand meaningful changes. The key, she told Anthony, will be documenting everything so thoroughly that denial becomes impossible. When I reveal my identity, there will be attempts to minimize what happened or claim misunderstanding. Anthony's journalistic instincts kicked in. We should gather statements from other passengers who witnessed the incident. I can help approach them discreetly. Over the next hour, they worked methodically. Anthony collected brief testimonials from nearby passengers who had witnessed both Jasmine's removal from first class and the subsequent service disparities. Meanwhile, Jasmine prepared a detailed timeline of events, annotated with evidence and witness corroboration. Dorothy managed to pass by once more, this time slipping Jasmine a folded cocktail napkin containing the names of 2 passenger advocacy groups within National Airways that had been pushing for better discrimination reporting tools. Whatever you're planning, the veteran flight attendant whispered. Make it count. Some of us have been fighting this battle for decades. Jasmine checked the time. They were approximately 2 hours from landing in San Francisco. Soon, Thomas Reynolds would be waiting at the gate to greet the Airline executive he believed would help secure his company's technological future. Little did he know that executive was sitting in economy class, methodically building a case that could either transform his airline or cost it a $300 million contract and irreparable public relations damage. The question isn't whether I have enough leverage, Jasmine told Anthony as they finalized their preparation. The question is whether National Airways has the integrity to embrace real change when confronted with their failures. 2 hours into the flight, the fasten seatbelt sign illuminated with an urgent chime. Captain Wilson's voice crackled over the intercom, his previously authoritative tone now tense. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some moderate turbulence. Please return to your seats immediately and secure any loose items. The aircraft lurched suddenly, eliciting gasps throughout the cabin. Drinks spilled as the plane dropped several hundred feet in seconds. Oxygen masks deployed in the first few rows where the turbulence hit hardest. Jasmine gripped her armrests, her years of flying experience telling her this was more than routine rough air. Anthony looked considerably more alarmed, his knuckles white as he clutched his seat. Is this normal? He asked through clenched teeth as the plane shuddered violently. Not entirely, Jasmine replied, her focus shifting to the flight attendants. Their expressions confirmed her suspicion. This was concerning them too. Have you ever been in a situation where someone who dismissed you suddenly needed your help? Comment number 1 if you believe in karma, or number 2 if you've experienced a dramatic role reversal like what's about to happen. Like this video, if you think people should be judged by their character and abilities, not appearances. And subscribe to see more stories of justice and redemption. The turbulence intensified. Through the gap in the curtain separating economy from first class, Jasmine could see panic spreading among the passengers who had been deemed more deserving of comfort and service. The businessman occupying her rightful seat was repeatedly pressing his call button, his face ashen. Richard and Veronica rushed through the cabin, their earlier composure replaced by barely concealed anxiety. They were reacting, not managing, a crucial difference in emergency situations. Jasmine's phone pinged with an incoming alert from Airline's aviation monitoring system, a professional tool she used to track flight conditions. The message confirmed what her instincts had already suggested. They were flying through a severe weather system that the aircraft's outdated weather radar had failed to properly identify. Ironically, this was exactly the kind of situation her company's new safety system was designed to prevent. The plane dropped again, this time violently enough to send unsecured items flying through the cabin. A child began crying, An elderly woman nearby started hyperventilating. "Breathe slowly," Jasmine instructed the woman leaning across the aisle. "In through your nose, out through your mouth. We're going to be fine." Her calm, authoritative tone drew attention from surrounding passengers. The woman followed Jasmine's breathing guidance, gradually regaining control. "Are you a doctor?" someone asked. "No," Jasmine replied, "but I know a lot about aircraft systems and flight safety. This turbulence is severe but well within the plane's design tolerances." More passengers turned toward her as she continued explaining in clear, reassuring terms how modern aircraft are built to withstand far worse conditions than they were experiencing. Her knowledge was evident, her manner calming. Dorothy appeared, struggling to maintain her balance as she moved through the rocking cabin. "The captain's requested all hands in first class," she told another flight attendant. "We've got a medical situation." Jasmine overheard this exchange. "What kind of medical situation?" "Panic attack escalating to chest pains," Dorothy replied. Quietly, "The gentleman in 3A, they're discussing an emergency landing. Seat 3A. Her seat, now occupied by the white businessman who had been given preferential treatment. "That's unnecessary," Jasmine stated. "Unless it's a genuine cardiac event, an emergency landing creates additional risks." Dorothy hesitated, clearly recognizing Jasmine's expertise but uncertain about protocol. The plane lurched again. The overhead bins popped open, and several bags tumbled out. Passengers screamed. In this moment of chaos, the aircraft's internal monitoring system began emitting a warning tone that Jasmine immediately recognized. The collision avoidance system was malfunctioning, another issue her company's technology would prevent. "The flight deck needs to switch to manual override on the collision system," she said urgently to Dorothy. "The turbulence is causing false proximity alerts." Dorothy stared at her. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because I designed the replacement for that exact system," Jasmine replied. "Please tell the captain to disable TCS and rely on ATC guidance until we clear this weather system." The specificity and confidence of her instruction left no room for doubt. Dorothy hurried toward the cockpit as another violent shake sent a serving cart crashing into a row of seats. In the growing chaos, Jasmine stood up, her natural leadership asserting itself. She began calmly directing passengers, securing loose items, demonstrating proper brace positions, reassuring those who were panicking. Anthony assisted, following her lead without question. "She knows what she's doing," he told a frightened teenager beside him. "She's an aviation expert." Word spread quickly through the cabin. Passengers who had earlier watched her discrimination in silent complicity now looked to her for guidance. The contrast was striking. The crew that had deemed her unworthy of first class was now struggling while she competently managed the situation in economy. Minutes later, Dorothy returned. "The captain followed your advice." The warning stopped immediately. She leaned closer, speaking quietly. "He wants to know who you are." "Tell him I'm the CEO of Airline Technologies," Jasmine replied. "And his new safety system would have prevented this entire situation." Dorothy's eyes widened in recognition. "You're the one." "Yes," Jasmine confirmed. "And when we land, I'll be deciding whether National Airways gets our new system at all." As Dorothy processed this revelation, a commotion erupted in first class. Through the curtain, Jasmine could see the businessman in 3A slumped in his seat, flight attendants crowding around him as he clutched his chest. "Anxiety attack," Jasmine diagnosed from a distance. "Hyperventilation leading to chest tightness, not a heart attack." "How can you be sure?" Anthony asked. "The pattern of his breathing and coloring," she explained. "Plus the situation. Sudden onset during turbulence. No previous distress signals. Richard appeared suddenly in economy, his face flushed with stress. "Is there a doctor on board?" he called out. Jasmine stood up. "Not a doctor, but I can help." Richard's expression soured upon recognizing her. "We need medical assistance." "Not. The passenger is having a severe anxiety attack triggered by the turbulence and possible claustrophobia," Jasmine interrupted calmly. "He needs controlled breathing guidance and possibly a mild sedative from the first aid kit, not an emergency landing that would create more anxiety." The confidence and precision of her assessment left Richard momentarily speechless. Other passengers were watching the interaction intently, the power dynamic visibly shifting. "Let her help," someone called out. "She knew about the collision system," Dorothy added, her decades of experience lending weight to her support. With visible reluctance, Richard stepped aside. Jasmine moved past him toward first class, where the businessman was gasping for breath, convinced he was having a heart attack. "Sir," she addressed him directly, her voice firm but reassuring. "You're experiencing an anxiety response. Your heart is racing because of adrenaline, not cardiac distress." She guided him through breathing exercises, instructed Veronica on the correct medication from the emergency kit, and within minutes had the situation under control. The businessman's color improved, his breathing normalized, and the panic in the cabin subsided along with the turbulence. Captain Wilson emerged briefly from the cockpit, surveying the scene with surprise. "The weather system is clearing," he announced. "We'll be resuming normal service shortly." His eyes lingered on Jasmine with evident confusion about her role and expertise. As she returned to her economy seat, Jasmine was aware of the transformed atmosphere in the cabin. Passengers who had ignored her mistreatment now smiled gratefully. Flight attendants who had dismissed her now avoided eye contact, awareness of their error beginning to dawn. Anthony leaned over. "That was impressive." "That was necessary," Jasmine corrected, "and a perfect illustration of why assumptions about people can be not just unfair but dangerous. They nearly made an unnecessary emergency landing because they couldn't recognize the difference between expertise and entitlement." Her phone chimed with another message. CEO Reynolds confirmed waiting at gate with welcome committee. "AITA San Francisco 45 minutes. Jasmine smiled slightly. "The real turbulence," she told Anthony, "is about to begin when we land." What do you think will happen when the airline CEO discovers who Jasmine really is? Is a dramatic confrontation brewing? Or will she find an even more powerful way to make her point? The captain's voice announced their final approach to San Francisco International Airport, instructing flight attendants to prepare the cabin for landing. Outside the windows, the iconic Golden Gate Bridge emerged through wisps of fog, a stark contrast to the tension still lingering inside the aircraft. Jasmine Wright sat perfectly composed in her economy seat, reviewing her documentation one final time. The evidence was comprehensive. Recordings, timestamps, witness statements, Dorothy's historical context, and the subsequent safety incident where her expertise had proven invaluable. "You sure you want to do this publicly?" Anthony asked quietly. "Most executives would handle it privately, maybe leverage it behind closed doors for better contract terms." Jasmine met his gaze steadily. "That's exactly why discrimination persists. Private resolutions protect institutions from accountability, while leaving systems unchanged. The passengers on this flight witnessed what happened. They should also witness the consequences." Her phone chimed with one final message before the device needed to be switched to airplane mode for landing. Reynolds brought PR team and photographers to gate. Expects historic handshake with Airline executive upon arrival. Jasmine allowed herself a small smile. He'll get his historic moment, just not the one he anticipated. The aircraft touched down with a slight bump, taxiing toward the terminal, where Thomas Reynolds, National Airways CEO, waited to greet the Airline executive he believed would deliver a $300 million contract the following day. As passengers prepared to deplane, Richard appeared in economy class, his demeanor noticeably less confident than earlier. "Ms. Wright," he began awkwardly, "the captain would like to thank you for your assistance during the turbulence. If you'd, like to deplane first." "No thank you," Jasmine replied evenly. "I'll exit in my assigned sequence, row 23. Richard's discomfort was palpable. "Of course. Again, we appreciate your, expertise." After he retreated, Anthony raised an eyebrow. Not even tempted by the offer to jump the line? "This isn't about convenience," Jasmine replied. "It's about consistent standards and equal treatment." She checked her watch. Besides, timing matters for what comes next. As the aircraft doors opened and first-class passengers began deplaning, Jasmine remained seated, watching through the cabin windows as a small welcoming committee assembled at the gate. A tall man in an expensive suit, Thomas Reynolds, she presumed, straightened his tie and plastered on a camera-ready smile. "That's Reynolds," Anthony confirmed, following her gaze. "I interviewed him last year. Typical CEO. Charming when it serves him. Ruthless otherwise." Slowly, methodically, the plane emptied. The businessman from seat 3A, recovered from his panic attack but still pale, was among the first to exit, receiving solicitous attention from Veronica and Richard. Jasmine noted how they carefully escorted him past the waiting CEO, both flight attendants realizing their error, but powerless to correct it now. Reynolds' confusion was visible even from a distance as he scanned each deplaning passenger, searching for someone who matched his expectation of an Airline executive. His welcoming smile gradually transformed into a perplexed frown as the first-class cabin emptied without delivering his expected VIP. "Now?" Anthony asked as their row was finally called to exit. "Not yet," Jasmine replied. "Patience is strategic." They gathered their belongings and joined the deplaning queue, moving slowly toward the exit. Ahead, through the aircraft door, Jasmine could see Reynolds consulting his phone with growing concern, likely receiving messages that the Airline executive was indeed confirmed on this flight. Captain Wilson and the flight crew had assembled near the exit for their customary farewell. Their earlier confidence had evaporated, replaced by uncertain glances as Jasmine approached. "Ms. Wright," the captain began in a low voice. "I understand there was some confusion during boarding." "Not confusion," Jasmine corrected calmly. "Discrimination, documented extensively." The captain paled slightly, but maintained his professional facade. "Perhaps we could discuss this privately." "I'm sure we can reach an accommodation." "I'm not interested in an accommodation," Jasmine replied. "I'm interested in accountability." She stepped past him into the jet bridge, Anthony following close behind. Through the terminal windows, she could see Reynolds checking his watch, his PR team looking increasingly uncomfortable as the expected photo opportunity failed to materialize. Dorothy appeared suddenly beside Jasmine in the jet bridge, having slipped away from the crew lineup. "Whatever you're about to do," the veteran flight attendant said quietly, "know that some of us have been waiting decades for someone with enough power to make real change happen." Jasmine nodded respectfully. "I won't waste the opportunity." As they emerged into the terminal, Jasmine paused, allowing the remaining passengers to move ahead. Reynolds stood about 20 feet away, now on his phone, likely calling for updates on the missing Airline executive. "Ready?" she asked Anthony. "To witness corporate history in the making?" "Absolutely," he replied. "I'll stay back but close, enough to document everything." Jasmine straightened her suit jacket and approached Reynolds directly, her steps measured and confident. The National Airways CEO was so absorbed in his phone conversation that he didn't notice her until she stood directly before him. "Mr. Reynolds," she said clearly, "I believe you're waiting for me." Reynolds looked up, confusion evident. "I'm sorry, Miss Wright. Jasmine Wright, CEO of Airline Technologies." The color drained from his face as the implications registered. Instantly, behind him his PR team exchanged alarmed glances. "Dr. Wright," he recovered quickly, extending his hand. "There must have been some confusion. We were expecting you in first class." "I had a first-class ticket," Jasmine replied, not accepting his handshake. "Your crew decided I didn't belong there." She gestured toward the gate where Captain Wilson, Veronica, and Richard now stood frozen, horrified recognition dawning on their faces as they realized who they had discriminated against. "There must be some mistake," Reynolds began, his corporate crisis management instincts kicking in. "No mistake," Jasmine stated firmly. "Your crew accused me of fraud, forcibly relocated me to economy, and gave my seat to a white man who arrived after me. They then provided deliberately substandard service, ignored safety protocols, and created a situation that nearly required an emergency landing." Reynolds' PR director stepped forward, professional smile firmly in place. "Perhaps we could discuss this privately. I'm sure we can." "We will discuss it," Jasmine interrupted, "but not privately." Discrimination thrives in silence. She turned to face the assembled crew members, who had now been joined by the terminal supervisor and several other airline officials alerted to the unfolding situation. "I require an immediate meeting with you, Mr. Reynolds, and the entire flight crew," Jasmine stated, her voice carrying clearly. "We have a $300 million contract scheduled for signing tomorrow that now hangs in the balance." The effect of her words was electric. Reynolds's expression transformed from diplomatic concern to genuine alarm. The crew members visibly recoiled, the magnitude of their actions becoming devastatingly clear. "Of course," Reynolds agreed quickly. "We can use the executive lounge. It's completely private." "The conference room adjacent to your gate will suffice," Jasmine countered. "My team is already there, and we have considerable evidence to review." She checked her watch deliberately. "You have exactly 9 minutes to assemble everyone involved. After that, I'll be calling my board to recommend we pursue partnership with your competitor instead." As Reynolds hurried to comply, mobilizing his staff with urgent gestures, Jasmine turned to find Dorothy watching the scene with quiet satisfaction. 35 years, the flight attendant said softly. "I've filed reports for 35 years. "Your reports won't be ignored this time," Jasmine promised. "Would you be willing to join our meeting? Your historical perspective would be valuable." Dorothy straightened her uniform with dignity. "I wouldn't miss it." Anthony approached as the airline staff scattered to prepare for the impromptu meeting. "That was masterful," he observed. "Not angry, not emotional, just pure, undeniable. Power." "The most effective response to discrimination isn't outrage," Jasmine replied. "It's consequences." Together they walked toward the conference room where Jasmine would transform a personal humiliation into a catalyst for systemic change. 9 minutes after being denied her rightful seat, she was about to demonstrate exactly why underestimating people based on their appearance was not just morally wrong, but profoundly unwise. The conference room adjacent to Gate 32 was never designed for high-stakes corporate confrontations. Its bland walls and functional furniture typically hosted routine staff briefings and occasional passenger assistance meetings. Today, however, it became the venue for one of the most consequential discussions in National Airways corporate history. Thomas Reynolds sat at the head of the table, his earlier confidence replaced by tense vigilance. To his right clustered the flight crew, Captain Wilson, Veronica, and Richard, all maintaining professional postures that couldn't quite mask their unease. Several senior airline officials had been hastily summoned, including the Vice President of Customer Experience and the airline's Chief Diversity Officer, a position that apparently existed on the organizational chart, if not in actual practice. Jasmine Wright took the opposite end of the table, projecting calm authority. Anthony had positioned himself unobtrusively in the corner, notebook open, but respecting the sensitive nature of the discussion. Dorothy sat to Jasmine's left, her presence a visual reminder of the historical context behind today's incident. "Thank you for assembling so quickly," Jasmine began, her tone businesslike. "Let's establish the facts before discussing implications." She placed her phone on the table and activated a recording app. "I'm documenting this conversation for accuracy. Does anyone object?" Reynolds glanced at his legal counsel, who gave a slight nod. "No objection," the CEO confirmed. "Excellent. Now let's review what occurred on Flight 1387 today." With methodical precision, Jasmine laid out the timeline of events: her arrival at the airport, the random security screening, the repeated questioning of her first-class ticket, the accusations of fraud, the forced relocation to economy, and the subsequent service disparities. As she spoke, she displayed evidence on her tablet: screenshots of her legitimate ticket purchase, photos of her boarding pass, video clips of the confrontations, and testimonials from passengers Anthony had collected. The flight crew shifted, uncomfortably as their actions were recounted in clinical detail. Captain Wilson attempted to interject with justifications about standard procedures and security protocols, but Jasmine calmly redirected to the evidence at hand. If these were indeed standard procedures, she countered, they would have been applied consistently to all passengers. Yet the white businessman who arrived after me was not subjected to the same scrutiny. His ticket wasn't verified multiple times. He wasn't accused of fraud. He was welcomed warmly and given preferential treatment. She turned to Dorothy. In your 35 years with National Airways, have you observed similar patterns of selective enforcement? Dorothy straightened in her chair. Yes, ma'am. I've documented over 200 incidents where passengers of color received differential treatment. I've filed formal reports on 43 incidents specifically involving this flight crew. To my knowledge, no substantive action was ever taken. Reynolds' face tightened. This is the first I'm hearing of these reports, which speaks to a systemic failure in your reporting structure, Jasmine noted. The data existed but never reached decision-makers, or was deliberately kept from them. She displayed a slide showing National Airways' current complaint process. A labyrinthine system that effectively buried discrimination reports under layers of bureaucracy. Now, let's discuss the safety implications, Jasmine continued, shifting to the turbulence incident. When the aircraft encountered difficulty, your crew was unprepared and nearly initiated an unnecessary emergency landing based on misdiagnosis of a passenger's condition. Captain Wilson bristled. With all due respect, Ms. Wright, aviation safety decisions are my purview as pilot in command. And yet, Jasmine replied evenly, it was my expertise, the expertise you dismissed during boarding, that correctly identified both the passenger's condition and the malfunction in your collision avoidance system. Had you diverted unnecessarily, you would have created additional risks while delaying hundreds of passengers. She let that reality settle before continuing. This illustrates precisely why prejudgment based on appearance is not just ethically wrong, but operationally dangerous. You assumed I didn't belong in first class based solely on my appearance, then discovered too late that I possessed critical knowledge your team needed. Veronica, the head flight attendant, finally spoke up. We weren't discriminating. There was a genuine confusion about your ticket status. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. A confusion that somehow applied only to me and not to any white passengers? A confusion that persisted despite multiple verifications? A confusion that led you to use the word fraudulent? She played an audio clip from her phone recording, Veronica's voice clearly stating, "We have reason to believe this ticket may be fraudulent." Words matter, Ms. Paulson, Jasmine stated, and yours revealed assumptions that had nothing to do with my ticket and everything to do with your perception of who belongs in first class. Reynolds, recognizing the indefensible position, attempted to pivot. Dr. Wright, we deeply regret this unfortunate incident. National Airways is committed to diversity and inclusion. I'd like to offer you our sincere apology along with compensation for your inconvenience. Perhaps complimentary first-class travel for a year. Mr. Reynolds, Jasmine interrupted quietly but firmly. This isn't about free tickets or personal compensation. This is about a culture that enabled discrimination without consequence. And it now directly impacts our business relationship. She opened her laptop to display the pending $300 million contract between Airline and National Airways. This agreement, scheduled for signing tomorrow, includes Section 11.4, Ethical Business Practices and Non-Discrimination Compliance. Your airline is already in breach of those terms. The gravity of the situation visibly settled on Reynolds as the business implications became clear. A discrimination incident was bad enough. Losing a transformative safety system contract to a competitor would be catastrophically worse. What are you proposing, Dr. Wright? He asked carefully. Systemic change, not symbolic gestures, she replied, displaying a new document outlining 5 specific demands. 1. Immediate accountability for discriminatory actions. 2. Implementation of comprehensive anti-discrimination training. 3. Overhaul of complaint procedures with transparent tracking. Establishment of hiring diversity initiatives with measurable goals. 5. Financial commitment to organizations combating racism. These aren't suggestions, Jasmine clarified. They're conditions for our continued business relationship. Reynolds conferred briefly with his team before responding. These appear to be reasonable requirements, though implementation timelines would need discussion. However, regarding the first point, immediate accountability, what specifically are you expecting? Jasmine's gaze moved deliberately to Captain Wilson, Richard, and Veronica. The crew members who perpetrated the discrimination should not remain in customer-facing roles. Their actions demonstrated fundamental unfitness for positions requiring fair treatment of diverse passengers. Captain Wilson surged to his feet. "This is outrageous. I've been with this airline for 20 years. You can't seriously expect—" "I expect accountability," Jasmine interrupted calmly. "Your actions were documented, witnessed, and indefensible. You violated company policy, federal transportation regulations, and basic human decency." The Vice President of Customer Experience spoke for the first time. "Termination seems extreme for a first offense." "First documented offense," Dorothy corrected quietly. "I filed reports about Captain Wilson 8 times in the past 3 years. Alone." An uncomfortable silence filled the room as this information registered. Reynolds, weighing business realities against personnel loyalties, came to a decision. "Suspension pending investigation is our standard protocol. We'll begin that process immediately." "That's inadequate," Jasmine replied. "Investigation is appropriate when facts are in dispute. Here they aren't. The discrimination occurred, was documented from multiple angles, and was witnessed by a plane full of passengers. Delayed accountability is no accountability at all." She closed her laptop deliberately. "I'll be clear. Airline will not partner with an organization that responds to proven discrimination with procedural delays. If you choose that path, I'll be announcing tomorrow that we've selected your competitor for our safety system implementation." The stakes couldn't have been clearer. Reynolds glanced at his leadership team, then at the flight crew who had created this crisis through their actions. His decision, when it came, was a testament to business pragmatism, if not moral courage. "Captain Wilson, Ms. Paulson, Mr. Thompson, you are placed on administrative leave effective immediately, pending formal termination proceedings," he stated firmly. "Your actions today have cost this airline immeasurably in both ethical standing and business opportunity." The crew members began protests that Reynolds silenced with a raised hand. "Security will escort you to retrieve your belongings. Your airline privileges are suspended, and you'll be contacted by HR regarding separation procedures." As security personnel appeared to implement this directive, Reynolds turned back to Jasmine. "Dr. Wright, regarding your other conditions, we accept them in principle. I propose we continue this conversation with our respective legal teams to formalize the commitments before tomorrow's contract signing." Jasmine considered the proposal. The immediate accountability she demanded had been delivered. The remaining systemic changes would require detailed implementation plans. "Agreed," she finally responded. "My team will work with yours overnight. The contract announcement proceeds only if we reach satisfactory agreement on all points." As the meeting concluded, Dorothy approached Jasmine quietly. "In 35 years, I've never seen anything like this. You did what none of us could do alone." "Not alone," Jasmine corrected, "but with the evidence you and others collected for years. Sometimes change requires the right leverage at the right moment." Anthony joined them as they exited the conference room. "That was remarkable," he observed. "Most executives would have simply walked away from the deal." "Walking away would have been easier," Jasmine acknowledged. "But it wouldn't have created change for the next passenger who looks like me but doesn't have my position or power." As they moved through the terminal, Jasmine noticed passengers from the flight watching with curious expressions, many having recognized her from the turbulence incident. Some nodded respectfully, perhaps understanding that they had witnessed something significant, even if they didn't know the details. "The contract signing is at 10 tomorrow, Jasmine noted, checking her schedule. "By then we'll know whether National Airways is truly committed to change or just damage control." She paused, looking back at the gate where the confrontation had begun. 9 minutes from discrimination to consequences. That might be a record in corporate America. Anthony smiled. "Some stories write themselves. This one deserves to be told." "It will be," Jasmine promised. "But first, let's make sure it ends with actual change, not just headlines." 3 months after the fateful flight, Jasmine Wright stood at the podium of the International Aviation Conference, surveying an audience filled with industry executives, engineers, and journalists. Among them sat Thomas Reynolds, CEO of National Airways. his expression a complex mixture of respect and residual discomfort. "Safety in aviation isn't just about mechanical systems and software," Jasmine began, her voice commanding the vast auditorium. "It's about creating an environment where every passenger and crew member is valued equally, where decisions are based on facts rather than assumptions, and where accountability isn't just a corporate buzzword, but a lived reality." The screen behind her displayed Airline's revolutionary safety system, now fully implemented across National Airways' entire fleet. The $300 million contract had indeed been signed, but only after the airline committed to sweeping changes that went far beyond the usual corporate diversity statements. "Today, I'm proud to announce that our partnership with National Airways represents a new standard in the industry, not just for technological advancement, but for organizational integrity." In the front row, Anthony Chen nodded appreciatively as he recorded the speech for his feature article in Tech Innovations magazine. His initial coverage of the discrimination incident and subsequent corporate transformation had already won journalism awards and sparked industry-wide conversations. "3 months ago, I experienced firsthand how assumptions and biases can compromise safety and dignity in air travel," Jasmine continued, not shying away from the personal element of the story. "Today, I can report that National Airways has not only acknowledged those failures, but implemented concrete changes that other airlines would do well to emulate." She gestured toward Reynolds, who stood to join her at the podium. The choreographed moment symbolized a transformed relationship. Not one of perfect harmony, but of productive tension anchored in mutual accountability. "When Dr. Wright first presented her requirements for our continued partnership, I saw them as demands," Reynolds admitted to the audience. "Today, I recognize them as the foundation for making National Airways a better, safer, and more equitable company." He outlined the changes implemented over the past 90 days. A comprehensive anti-discrimination training program had been developed and deployed across all staff levels, with measurable results tracked quarterly. The labyrinthine complaint system had been replaced with a transparent process featuring independent review and clear escalation paths. Hiring practices had been overhauled, resulting in the most diverse incoming class of pilots and senior staff in the airline's history. Most significantly, National Airways had established a $5 million fund supporting organizations combating racism in transportation and public accommodations. "We still have work to do," Reynolds acknowledged, "but we're committed to the journey." As he returned to his seat, Jasmine reclaimed the podium. "Accountability isn't punishment," she noted. "It's the prerequisite for growth and improvement. The crew members who discriminated against me lost their positions, but the company itself gained a path forward." In the audience, Dorothy Williams smiled quietly. After 35 years as a flight attendant, she now headed National Airways' newly created Passenger Advocacy Department, ensuring discrimination complaints received proper attention and response. "The technology we're showcasing today will save lives by preventing accidents," Jasmine continued, returning to the safety system that had initially brought Airline and National Airways together. "But equally important are the human systems that determine how we treat one another, how we respond to mistakes, and how we create cultures of inclusion rather than exclusion." She detailed how the incident had become a case study throughout the industry. Other airlines had begun reviewing their own practices, recognizing that beyond the moral imperative, discrimination carried significant business and safety risks. "The fired crew members from Flight 1387 recently appealed their termination," Jasmine revealed. "That appeal was denied after review by an independent ethics board. Their case now serves as a training example across the industry, a clear message that discriminatory actions have consequences regardless of seniority or position." As the presentation concluded, Jasmine opened the floor for questions. A young, Black woman studying aerospace engineering asked what advice Jasmine would give to those facing similar discrimination without her level of corporate power. "Document everything," Jasmine replied without hesitation. "Build networks of allies. Use established reporting channels, but don't rely solely on them. And perhaps most importantly, recognize that your presence in spaces where others think you don't belong isn't just about your individual journey. It's about creating pathways for those who will follow. After the conference concluded, Jasmine found herself in National Airways' Premium Lounge, preparing for her flight back to Atlanta. The irony wasn't lost on her. Returning on the same airline that had discriminated against her, but now as a recognized VIP partner. As she settled into a comfortable chair, Anthony joined her for a brief follow-up interview. "Your story has resonated far beyond the aviation industry," he noted. "People see it as a template for turning discrimination into actual systemic change." Jasmine nodded thoughtfully. The key was refusing both easy options, either walking away entirely or accepting token apologies. Real change requires leverage, evidence, and specific demands. "And what about personal vindication?" Anthony asked. "Was that part of your motivation?" "Of course it was," Jasmine acknowledged honestly. "I'm human. Being humiliated publicly affected me deeply. But personal vindication alone would have been temporary satisfaction without lasting impact. I wanted something more durable." Their conversation was interrupted by the announcement of her flight. As Jasmine gathered her belongings, a National Airways representative approached with deferential respect. "Dr. Wright, your flight is ready for boarding whenever you're prepared. The new crew has been briefed on the safety system implementation. They're quite excited to meet you." Jasmine thanked him and made her way to the gate, Anthony walking alongside. "Will you write about the follow-up?" she asked him. "Absolutely," he confirmed. "People need to see that real change isn't just about the dramatic moment of confrontation, but the steady work that follows." At the gate, Jasmine paused before boarding. 9 minutes, she reflected. That's how long it took to go from discrimination to firing the crew. But 3 months of detailed work is what turned an incident into institutional change. She boarded the aircraft, this time receiving the respectful welcome her position warranted. But more importantly, the same welcome now extended to all passengers regardless of appearance. As she settled into her first-class seat, Jasmine noted the subtle differences from her previous flight. The crew was noticeably more diverse. The safety briefing included information about the new Airline system. Most significantly, the atmosphere conveyed professionalism rather than gatekeeping. When the aircraft lifted off toward Atlanta, Jasmine allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The journey that had begun with humiliation had transformed into something far more significant than personal vindication. It had become a template for accountability that would benefit countless passengers who would never know her name or story. Sometimes, she reflected, the most powerful response to discrimination wasn't just surviving it or even succeeding despite it. The truly transformative response was using one's position to ensure the system itself changed for those who would follow. This story reminds us that true power lies not in positions or titles, but in how we use them when faced with injustice. Jasmine could have simply leveraged her CEO status for personal vindication or walked away entirely. Instead, she recognized a larger opportunity to transform a broken system. Discrimination thrives when those with influence stay silent or seek only personal resolution. Real change requires evidence, strategic thinking, and specific demands that address root causes rather than symptoms. It's not enough to punish individual actors while leaving flawed systems intact. Perhaps most importantly, this story shows that accountability isn't punishment, it's the foundation for genuine improvement. By rejecting both passive acceptance and purely personal revenge, Jasmine created something more valuable: structural changes that would protect countless future passengers who didn't share her level of influence. When we encounter discrimination, the most powerful response isn't just to overcome it personally, but to use whatever leverage we have to ensure others won't face the same barriers. Sometimes 9 minutes of courage can lead to generations of change. Have you ever witnessed discrimination transform into meaningful change? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories of justice and transformation. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that speaking truth to power can create real change. Thank you for watching, and remember, your voice matters not just for yourself, but for everyone who will follow in your footsteps.